Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland. When Electric Ladyland finally got released in October the 16th, 1968, it seemed to kind of bemuse a lot of the music press and received very mixed reviews. Rolling Stone said the song sounded unstructured and they were disappointed by the heavy-handed guitar playing, while the melody maker called it mixed up and muddled. A few kind of grasped a little of the album's depth, majesty and sheer genius. But to be fair, Jimi was out there. He was exploring unknown territories. He was boldly going where no guitarist had gone before. Now, if you take a look at some of 1968's other great albums, The Stones, Beggar's Banquet, The Beatles' White Album, The Band, music from Big Pink, Van Morrison's Astral Weeks, all were great albums, but nothing came close to Jimi's sonic assault of monstrous psychedelic blues drenched in soul and funk. Even Jimi's contemporaries, Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, all great guitar players for sure, but they were light years behind Jimi. They might have cranked up their amps to 11 at times, but Jimi's was up to around 19 or 20 all the time, to be fair. By 1968, Jimi had become tired of all the party tricks, playing with his teeth, behind his head, playing the hits, the endless tours. He just wanted to be taken seriously as a musician. The recording sessions for Electric Ladyland went on sporadically for well over a year. July and December 1967, January 1968, and then April through to August 1968. Jimi would do endless takes of songs in his quest for perfection. Gypsy Eyes, for example, they took over 50 takes of that song, but in the end I feel every second of time spent in the studio was worth it. So let's have a look at Electric Ladyland, track by track. Track 1, And the Gods Made Love. Originally this was called At Last the Beginning, and basically it's just a sound painting, vari-speed drums, distorted vocals, a suitable, heavenly, psychedelic overture to a great album. Track 2, Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland, where Jimi meets Motown and Curtis Mayfield. I guess this is what they call cosmic soul. Jimi's 3-part falsetto backing harmonies are straight out of the Temptations songbook. They are perfect. Remember, this is a man who had little or no confidence in his voice. All those years learning his trade with the Isley Brothers, Curtis Knight and Little Richard come to fruition here. These are perfect soul, rhythm and blues, infectious grooves. Remember, this is just Hendrix on vocals, guitar and bass, and Mitch Mitchell on drums. But notice how Jimi fills in the spaces with his multi-track guitars. You've got backwards guitars, you've got normal guitars, you've got guitars played through a Leslie speaker, and take a listen to his bass playing. It's off the scale. While we fly right over the love-filled sea. Track 3, Crosstown Traffic. Back in the 60s, artists kind of had to be a bit creative when referring to sex or drugs in their songs. Here Jimi uses the metaphor of getting through crosstown traffic to get away from an unwanted lover. The famous do-do-do melody lines that drift through the piece are actually provided by Jimi's guitar, Noel Redding and Dave Mason on backing vocals, and a kazoo, a homemade kazoo, cellophane wrapped around a cone, which you then either blow through or vocalise through. How do you think of that? Elsewhere the song is heavy and funky, with Jimi's rhythm guitar locked into Mitch Mitchell's pounding drums. Track 4, Voodoo Child. Music critic Charles Shaw Murray describes Voodoo Child as virtually a chronological guided tour of blues styles, ranging from early Delta blues through the electric blues of Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker to the more sophisticated style of B.B. King and the cosmic blurt of John Coltrane. For the recording of this song, Jimi brought in Stevie Winwood and Jefferson Airplane bassist Jack Cassidy to play alongside himself and Mitch Mitchell. Hendrix had wanted for a long time to play with Stevie Winwood, even at one point considering forming a band with him. Jack Cassidy, was one of the greatest ever exponents of the bass guitar. If you want to check out just how good Cassidy was, take a listen to the live Airplane record, Bless Its Pointed Little Head. Jack is on fire, with the rest of the band playing catch up to his extraordinary playing. Mitch Mitchell and Jack Cassidy loved playing together, and they form a beautiful backbone for Jimi and Stevie Winwood to bounce off of each other. Jimi on guitar, Winwood on organ, and it's astounding. It's 15 astounding minutes, believe me. Stevie Winwood says there were no chord sheets, nothing. Jimi just guided us through. It was a one-take job. He was that sure of his abilities. Jimi had apparently turned up with Winwood and Cassidy in tow, straight from an evening of jamming at the Scene Club in New York, about 2 blocks away from the recording studio. Track 5, Little Miss Strange by Noel Redding. This really is a strange one. The track could fit perfectly into any Move, Pink Floyd, Pretty Things album from the late 60s. It's a lovely slice of English psychedelic pop. The story goes, as the sessions continued, everything became a bit fraught, with Noel Redding in particular fed up with all the waiting around, the endless takes of songs, all the hangers-on Jimi brought to the studio. So I'm guessing, while Jimi did like the song, it was kind of a make-up, let's be friends gesture to Noel to include it on the finished album. I love the myriad guitar tones that Jimi manages to cram into the song. Back in 1968, there weren't too many pedals, there weren't too many effects you could buy, but Hendrix was always out there, coming up with new stuff, pushing the boundaries. You never saw Jimi without guitar nearby. The endless jams, the endless hours of practice and rehearsals. Jimi was always there, working on his craft. Long Hot Summer Night. Many people listen to Jimi, and of course they get stuck on his soloing and that amazing lead guitar playing, and that's understandable. But he was also an incredibly inventive rhythm guitarist. All those years backing other musicians as a professional rhythm and blues guitarist. And like he always did, he absorbed genres, turned them on their heads and turned them into something uniquely Jimi Hendrix. All the other guitar gunslingers back then, they didn't have that background in soul and funk. There Mr. Hendrix again was out on his own. With the Jimi Hendrix experience, he moulded all those influences and came up with a rhythm guitar style that was all his own. Take a listen to this track to see exactly what I mean. Track number 7, a cover of Come On by Earl King, also known as Let the Good Times Roll. This was one of the first songs Jimi ever played live back in his high school days. King first released the song in 1960. Music writer John Perry wrote that it is performed in the guitar-friendly key of E, specifically designed to cram in as many hot guitar licks as possible. Jimi sure does that aplenty here. Jimi keeps Earl King's original rhythm guitar parts, but performs the song in a much faster tempo, but then solos like there's no tomorrow. Jimi's playing is endlessly inventive. The magical phrasing, the constant variation in attack and mood, it's just incredible. Next up, Gypsy Eyes. Noel Redding and Chas Chandler both got fed up to the back teeth with Jimi's endless takes of songs in the studio. However, if you listen to the early demos of Gypsy Eyes, they sound nothing like the finished version. So there was a method to Jimi's madness. The finished version opens with Mitchell's bass drum, a pick scrape, and into that fabulous riff. Jimi making full use of string mutes. Jimi then sings the opening line while playing the same notes he's singing on the guitar, scatting. George Benson, the jazz guitarist, went on to become a great exponent of this technique. If you want to delve a little bit deeper into this track, Take a look at some of the excellent guitar teachers who break this track down on YouTube. It's so complex and labyrinthine and so funky. Burning of the Midnight Lamp. The Whitney Houston connection. On this track, Jimi uses the rhythm and blues girl group The Sweet Inspiration. The group were founded by Emily Houston, Whitney's mother. The group can be heard backing Van Morrison on his classic song Brown Eyed Girl. The track also features Jimi on harpsichord, and while Hendrix was quick to dismiss his keyboard skills, others who knew him begged to differ, saying he was quite an accomplished player. The mood of the song is very introspective and melancholy. Jimi Hendrix. There are some very personal things in there, but I think everyone can understand the feeling when you're travelling that no matter what your address, there is no place you can call home. The feeling of a man in a little old house in the middle of a desert where he's burning the midnight lamp. You don't mean for things to be personal all the time, but they are. Rainy Day, Dream Away. One thing I always loved about Jimi was his lack of ego, especially where other musicians were concerned. He'd play with anyone, from cab drivers who could play the congas to the best in the world. Here Jimi gathers Freddie Smith on sax, Mike Finnegan on organ and Buddy Miles on drums. Buddy plays a cool shuffle while Hendrix, Finnegan and Smith weave around or play call and response. The bass is actually provided courtesy Finnegan's keyboards. There was no real structure to this song. The boys just started a groove and Jimi guided them through with nods and hand signals. You ever hear that expression, he made that guitar talk? Jimi actually does around 3 minutes 9 seconds into the song. 1983, A Merman I Should Turn to Be. I could probably do a whole video on this one track. It's that good and that groundbreaking. Jimi Hendrix's epic science fiction tale of people despairing of a future apocalypse and returning to the source of all life, the sea. A machine, a drug, enables Jimi and his partner to breathe underwater and find the mystical city of Atlantis beneath the waves. As rock music started to move forward, to progress, artists were looking far beyond these usual scenarios. Boy meets girl, boy can't get girl, girl leaves boy, etc. Jimi had been a huge fan of science fiction since his youth. Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, while Chas Chandler had a huge collection of sci-fi novels which Jimi just devoured. One particular favourite of Jimi's was George Stewart's The Earth Abides, which tells the story of a civilization being reborn after decimation by a deadly disease. Side 4, Still Raining, Still Dreaming. It's basically a continuation of Rainy Day, Dream Away, and it picks up where that track finished. Jimi didn't have any lyrics at the session at all. They came later. Mike Finnegan and Buddy Miles provide the perfect background for Jimi's superb extended workout on wah-wah guitar. 3 tracks left until the end of the album, and every one is a stone cold classic. House Burning Down. April the 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated. This is then followed by a wave of riots across the USA, the greatest incident of social unrest since the Civil War. They say Jimi had written House Burning Down about the riots in the Watts district of LA in 1965, after a confrontation between a black man and the LA police. Sound familiar? 6 days of civil unrest and over $40 million in property damage. $40 million in property damage. Maybe Jimi considered, in light of King's death, that the time was right for the song to be released. Well, someone stepped from the crowd. He was 19 miles high. He shouts retired and disgusted, so we paint red through the sky. I said the truth is straight ahead, so don't burn yourself instead. Try to learn instead of burn. Hear what I say. Even though Jimi had broken down racial barriers from day one of his solo career, Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, The Experience, both were integrated bands. He had to tread warily. Racism was far from dead. Muhammad Ali, after refusing to fight in the Vietnam War, was convicted of draft dodging and sentenced to 5 years in prison, none of which he served. Another powerful black figure being made a scapegoat. In the Mexico Olympics, John Carlos and Tommy Smith, bronze and gold medalists in the 200 metres, gave their famous Black Power salute to protest against racial inequality. Both were ostracised by the US sporting establishment for many, many years. As a prominent black artist, Jimi had to tread carefully, very carefully. But take a listen to the end of the song, House Burning Down. As the guitars pan from speaker to speaker, they say you can hear a panther growl, a nod to the civil rights group, the Black Panthers. Anyway, the song opens with my all-time favourite guitar intro, and if you'll excuse the pun, Jimi's on fire for the whole track, and you can see what I mean when I say his amps are turned up to 19 or 20. All Along the Watchtower. Jimi and Randy California, who played with Jimi in the Blue Flames in 1966, both shared a great love of Bob Dylan. Jimi always had a Dylan songbook or two with him, but listening to Dylan's original version on John Wesley Harding, who could have envisaged that being turned into the cinematic epic that was Jimi's take on it? Jimi shows here his wonderful ability to orchestrate, to arrange those musicians around him. You have Dave Mason on 12-string acoustic guitar, Jimi on electric, Mitch Mitchell on drums, and even Brian Jones on percussion. Jones actually did a piano part for the song, but it was pretty bad, and thank God it was left off. The three solos that Jimi plays in the middle part of the song, I think I could listen to forever. I was told that Jimi achieved the Hawaiian sounding part of those solos with one of his rings, but stories vary. Randy California played the song from around 1973 in pretty much every show he did until he passed in 1997. It was his homage to the man he called the Master. And so sadly, to the last track, Voodoo Child, Slight Return. Will I stand up next to a mountain and I chop it down with the edge of my hand? Will I pick up all the pieces and make an island? Might even raise a little sand. Now, you can have a million guitarists play this song note for note, capture the exact sound with all those wonderful effects, pedals you can buy these days, but no one will ever capture Jimi's feel. That you can never ever buy. Joe Satriani is just the greatest piece of electric guitar work ever recorded. For me, the longer version of Voodoo Child is Jimi paying tribute to all the great bluesmen. The Slight Return is Jimi saying, now this is where I'm going to take the blues. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Listening again to Electric Ladyland today, I think it sounds as good as it ever did. It sounds like it could have been recorded yesterday. It's just a fantastic record. So, my last words are please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's some more Jimi Hendrix videos to come. I'll leave the last words to Jimi. If I don't meet you no more in this world, then I'll meet you in the next one. And don't be late.